it's a two-part question. I'll repeat it just in case. This is me also clarifying the question. One is, what's happening when the light and the sound is doing its thing, and how do I know that it's a good thing to do? Something like that? How do I know?
Not how do you know it's a good thing to do. Like, let's say, I'll use myself as an example.
Yes.
Okay. Perpetually late.
Perpetually late.
You want to change the synapse pattern.
Okay.
How do you know what to do to give that effect, or any?
You weren't late today. I was impressed.
I worked really hard on that.
Actually,
so hard on that.
You were the yin of the yang, which I suffer from, right? Early. I'm always early. But anyway, okay. I'm going to make this respectfully answered as best I can without making it boring by talking about it too long. There's a great deal of research that has been done, and the research that I have used that research to make many of my determinations. That's the first thing. There's fantastic research as early as 1960. Some of the best and most provocative stuff that I use to recognize what frequencies have a relationship to what geometrics was published first in 1960, then 66 by this guy named Kluver. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's the U with the two dots. And they're still called to this day Kluver's form constants. And he used mescaline and stroboscopics and frequency generators, along with EEG, and he saw that certain frequency stimulations to the brain with light actually were predictably able to create certain geometrics in the visual cortex without any colors or shapes from the outside. The first ones are radials or spider webs. The second one are honeycombs or checkerboards. The third class are tunnels and funnels. And the fourth class are spirals. And I'm giving this as an example. One, it's old research. The other is it's been proven over and over again to be reliably accurate. And if you say, Garnet, I want to see a whole bunch of orange and yellow and red, and could there be some honeycomb checkerboards with tunnels? I say, okay. And I can create compositions so that you'll see that. It's not because I'm some wise person, it's because I just access the research. And the research is there. Now, it isn't just working with meat. The thing is that these brain states have corresponding what we'll call mind states. And that's the amazing thing. You know, the early research did brain entrainment, did signals, and then people reported subjective states, right? So if I did, famously some alpha, then some kind of calm and clear subjective state was being reported by people. So we knew if you made the brain be like that, then there was a corresponding mind state. So that was one direction, right? Brain pointing towards mind. The biggest research, and these are the ones that are famous, you see all the monks with all the things on their head. University of Wisconsin is the leader, and I pointed my friend Steve because he's from Wisconsin. And what they're doing is they're getting people now that have credible experience in mind states. And that person enters into that mind state and they record what the brain does. So the early stuff, you made the brain do something and then you ask, well, what was the mind state that corresponded to it? So brain signal to mind state. Now they're collecting, let's go into mind states and see what the brain signals are. So it's two-directional. And what we're finding is that there's correlation. So the early stuff from the 70s and the early 80s where you make the brain in a certain state, which is artificial. A single sustained state is not the way the brain likes it. The brain gets bored, right? very quickly. Gregory Bateson, I always refer to him. He's one of my favorite thinkers. Very eclectic systems thinker. He's dead now, but that's not the reason. And because I was very interested in, because everybody talks about energy, but the curiosity is information. And he said two things out of volumes of books. There are books written about trying to explain what Bateson said. Because when you read Bateson, you think, what are you saying? So now there are all these books that are being written that are basically entitled, this is what he meant. Because his thinking went all over the place, and he was brilliant. Information, he has two ways of defining information. Those two things taught me just about everything. The first one is my less favorite, but they're both great. He said, information is a difference that makes a difference. That's information. It's a difference that makes a difference. My favorite, he said, information is news of change. News of change. This is really meaningful. When I was working with the Russians for a while with biofeedback stuff, and they're very esoteric, but their whole thing was based on degrees of difference and change in readings. And, you know, everybody was perplexed, and Bateson made it clear to me. So the thing about brain, like trance states are the way they are because they're unchanging. They're uncommon, they're also abnormal. Because you hold the brain in a sustained, almost singular state for a period of time, and the brain doesn't work like that. It's like me strapping you in that chair and not letting you move. Your body needs to, even when we sleep, we need to move. The brain is swarming. You know, it's that school of fish. If I'm not much into the water, but you see, you know, or the starlings, or doing like this, you know, thousands at a time. That's the brain. It's a complex adaptive system. So if you put it into that singular state, it's unusual. It's uncommon. It's also abnormal. The brain wants to get out of it. Why? Because there's no news. There's no difference. There's no difference that makes a difference. It gets bored. The information drops down to nothing, and the brain has got better things to do than sit around and wait for something to happen when nothing is happening. That's why when you put on your clothes, you feel them. After a while, you don't feel them, because the sensation doesn't change. You don't feel it until you take it off. And that news of change is information. So in working to create the compositions with the Neuralite, what I've done is work with the dynamics of change built upon these well-known frequency states that are not states. It's like, okay, I go beep, 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 beep. That's 3 hertz, roughly. A hertz is pulse per second, right? Beep, beep, beep. In 1 second, I went beep 3 times. Beep, 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 beep. Different pitch. Same frequency, different meaning. Musicians know that. When you change keys, when you change pitch, notes go up and down, there's a different message. You know, I oftentimes say that if you compose a piece of music, you know, and I give the same example, so pardon me if you've heard it before, but, you know, it's a melancholic, it's a sad tune. You had a sad experience, and you create this song, this composition, this music, and you play it. I don't have to tell you that it's a sad song. When you listen to it, the tendency is you feel melancholic, you feel sad. Or, you know, if it's a happy song, you know, like, how do you know? It's not just, you know, one beat. You know, music has rhythm, of course. And the example I give, again, pardon me for my repetition, but the way I designed the Neuralite, because it has both sound and light. You had a question, didn't you? Right? And maybe you do too. I'm going to talk a little bit more, then we'll get your question. Now, I don't know if I answered yours.
You did, but it's all good stuff.
Okay, it's sort of in that direction. The way I designed the Neuralite is that the sound aspect is like the drummer and the bass player. And the light is like the lead guitarist and the vocalist. One song, but if you recorded separate tracks and you listen to the vocalist and you listen to the drummer, you may not have any sense of an association of what's going on. There may not seem to be any relationship at any given point in time. But when you put them all together, all of a sudden as a composition, one enhances the other, one supports the other. Basically, my intent with the sound is to create the context, hold it all together, wherever it's driving itself, right? With being late, we'll talk about that. The sound is creating the context. Like, you don't know, sometimes you don't even hear, unless you love bass, you can be hearing, you know, I'm talking mostly a rock band or something, you don't necessarily hear the bass player. But if that bass player stopped playing, you'd notice all of a sudden the absence of something that was really important. But the bass is really not designed to be dominant. It's part of the amazing rhythmic interpretation of the piece. So the sound is like the drummer and the bass player. It creates context, holds it all together. And the light is usually like, you know, the lead guitarist and the vocalist up front. You know, it's Keith and Mick up there. And your attention tends to, and there's a lot of complexity. You can do a lot of things there that you can't do with the sound. So I put it together as a composition. This is like a crab walking sideways, back to your question about being late. It's a principle I call first things first. When you're pursuing a neuroplastic change, with the Neurolite or however, it's generally a mistake to pursue what you want directly, because normally there's something that comes before that is really disabling what you have a problem with. What does that mean? For example, people that have difficulty in speaking, and it's a degrading process for some with age, the realization in neuroplastic research is because they can't hear as clearly. Because you can't say what you can't hear. So the focus is not on promoting the speech, it's promoting the hearing. Okay, sometimes, let's talk about memory, same point, and this is about your question about being late. And we'll get to your question, I'm not forgetting. The memory issue. Neuroplastic research shows, in most cases, not all, most, the reason why long-term memory is fading is because short-term memory has not been efficiently imprinting. Okay, so let's work on short-term memory. The reason why short-term memory is not working well is because you're not paying attention. You didn't forget it, you never got it in the first place because you weren't paying attention. Why aren't you paying attention? And it gets broader and broader. The point is, you're not paying attention, maybe because you're socially anxious, and there you are, and your anxiety is building, and somebody introduces themselves, "Hi, my name is Debbie. I don't remember your name because my memory is actually not the problem. It's not even my attention. My anxiety is so strong that I was socially anxious, so that even when you told me your name, I wasn't being attentive to you introducing yourself because I was so anxious." So actually, in some cases, you can help people profoundly with their memory by working on their anxiety. Because that anxiety doesn't allow them to be present. If they're not present, they're not attentive. If they're not attentive, they don't get the information. They don't get the information, they can't recall it, they never got it. So what you do when working in neuroplasticity, and I teach this with the Neurolite, but it's true in all of them, is you kind of look for first things first. Like I was working with this one fellow who has a Neurolite now in Berkeley. Very in early 60s, extremely intelligent, well-educated, really articulate. And he was really frustrated because he was beginning to not find the words as fast as he wanted. Right? And it bothered him. So we talked about that. I said, well, what's it like when you can't remember the word? He says, well, and then it just boom, right? He says, I'm frustrated. I get frustrated. And actually, the more times he associated being frustrated with not finding the word, now any time that he began to seek a word, he was frustrated. It was a learning, it's called associative conditioning. He was associating frustration with the not remembering so much that now it's like Pavlov's dog, ring the bell, salivating, there's no food. Actually, to help him with his short-term memory, it was to quell the frustration, calm him. First of all, recognize, hey, don't you notice that the frustration is kind of getting in your way? And just that realization decreased the frustration. He began to disassociate. Instead of associate, he began to disassociate. In neuroplasticity, sometimes you have to unlearn before you can relearn or new learn. And that's why some of the work is about undoing. I mean, does this sound anything like spiritual tradition and teachings? How can you put, I can't put more tea in your cup because, teacher, you're overflowing. Well, if your cup's not empty, what can I do? So that there is some unlearning that can happen. And frequently, once a person realizes that, it's very fast. Because that stuff kind of disappears. You kind of gloss over that, and you become focused on the outcome problem as opposed to kind of how you get yourself there. Yes, finally, if you remember it.
Yes. My question is,
a little louder, please.
When someone comes to have the treatment,
yes,
do they have to know what it is that they have one focus that they want to have results on?
Okay.
And how long does it take to even notice the change?
Sure. I'll repeat the question for the sake of the recording. When a person comes for a Neurolite session, do they have to know what they're supposed to work on or why, or do they have to be that clear about it? And how long does it take for evidence of benefit? You're welcome. I don't know and I don't know, but I'll give you my best shot. You got a question after I answer your mom's question. Okay, it's probably the best question of the night. Right? Why are you talking so much? There are different purposes why someone would pursue neuroplastic change. Just about everything qualifies. One is, I'm getting older, but I'd like my, whatever it's called, mind, to keep working well. So it's anticipating the degrading functions that are evidenced with many people that age. Sometimes you want to do that. This is a wellness model, right? It works with exercise, nutrition, and learning. So you can anticipate that. The other is you're starting to experience it, and you want to slow it down and, if possible, reverse it. So there's that kind of general category that's normally associated with aging, but it's also why the big 4-0 happens to have a reputation, turning 40, because the 25-year-old brain is at its best. It usually plateaus for around 10 to 15 years, and around about 40, it starts to slip and slide a bit, unless you do something about it. So there's that category. Then there are the people that are in trouble and they want help. And let's say that it is something that advances in age, and these days is talked a lot about. I've already talked about it, dementias and so on, right? Interestingly, and this is a general statement, it's kind of answering both parts of the question. The people in that state are the easiest ones to work with because you work at such a fundamental level. There's the brain gym, which you'll learn more about perhaps, that isolates certain brain signals. It's called a gym because you go there and you do isolated exercises. And then there's the thing that sticks in your nose that puts light activation in the blood. Sounds bizarre, but it does verifiably for 25 years of clinical proof now increase mitochondrial ATP. By shining this light into your bloodstream one way or the other, we do it through the nose because the mucosa is so thin, capillary network is dense. You shine the right wavelength in there, it circulates and it downloads wherever the metabolic need is the greatest. It's crazy, and it's true. And there's in my website, theneurolight.com, take the business card, there's about a 4 or 5 page meta-study that is a summary of the research on it. Most of it Asian, so a lot of the docs in the US of A say, well, I can't believe that. But it's there, and it's been used in both traditional and conventional medicine, mostly China and Russia, for more than 2 decades now. And it's just crazy how good it is. I'm trying to remember the point that we were talking about. The other thing is, okay, so the kinds of uses are wide. So part of the task of what I would call a light coach, L-I-G-H-T, not life coach, but light coach. If you have no other credential and you want to work in wellness, you have a tool using light and sound. Okay, say you're a light coach, is like, why are you here? You would ask the person. And they may know or they may not know. As long as you understand that you're not, according to credential, practicing medicine without a license, that you're not trying to cure disease, you're working at a fundamental level to support self-regulation in the brain. I tell you, it's hard. I've never really met a person that couldn't benefit. I mean, even if I've got one, okay, I don't know. You know, he calls himself my student, I don't know, but you know, he lives in Mumbai, in India, and he works with special kids. Sadhbir, this is for you. And I really respect what he's doing. He works with special kids, both ends of the spectrum. He works with savants. Savants are people, young people like your age that can do things that nobody can believe. It's like they can put their hand on a book and they can tell you what's in the book without reading it. They can take cards and tell you exactly what color the card is without looking at it. Blue, blue, green, green, yellow, yellow. 10 cards, 20 cards in a row. And he also Sadhbir works with autistic and Down syndrome. And he works with neuroplasticity, and now the Neurolight is his primary tool, and he combines it with some other things, which I recommend. Don't just do sensory neuroplasticity. Learn about movement, learn about mental, and I can give you some pointers in that direction. Neuroplasticity is the big deal. Now on outcome, there's a way of using it that we've done actually earlier today. That's what I call help right now. Somebody comes in, and you know, I'll use the analogy, they have a stiff sore back, and you're a massage therapist, and you can help them right now with that. But the fact is that it's a chronic condition. They really need an exercise program, maybe lose some weight, da-da-da-da-da-da. So coaching them into a progressive program, it's much like here at Dragon Herb. Somebody comes in and says, hey, I feel like something. And, you know, Borna or somebody, you know, stirs up a drink or takes off a bottle and say, here, this is going to help you right now. But the fact is that it's not going to last that long. In all likelihood, if this is a recurring problem, we need to develop a program for you. So, a little bit technical, I'm going to tell you 4 categories or types of neuroplastic change. Number one is called functional plasticity, and it happens within minutes to hours, where you have the session and within a short period of time you have evidence. Chances are easy come, easy go, but that's one type. It can be that fast. Minutes to hours. It's called functional plasticity. Then there's synaptic plasticity. That takes place over the course of days to weeks. Then there's neuronal plasticity. That takes place over the course of months. And then there's what's called systemic plasticity. That takes place over the course of years. Now, you'll recognize from other types of experiences that this pretty much is the way the organism is. This is the body. The body's like that. You know, you can have things change in a few minutes, good or bad. You can have things that take, you know, days to weeks, some things over the course of months, and some things over the course of years. That's the native behavior of neuroplastic change. So how long it takes depends on the person and the goal. You can make this a very short course in increasing alerted attention, for example. And as long as they're reinforcing it in, you know, I would like neuroplasticity to move into kind of a lifestyle philosophy more than a method for an outcome. Because you realize that, you know, we separate movement, mental, and sensory as though they were three separate things, but right, they're always happening at the same time. The organism doesn't separate those things. That's just you. So the way you move, what you do with what we'll call your mind, mental, and what you expose yourself to in terms of sensory input, that is modeling your brain in a neuroplastic fashion. So to me, it fits as a general premise that it's very easy then to squeeze the premise down into application, because you know it's common sense. This is not magic. Some things do take time, but if you get the right method, it works faster than you think. Okay?
Repeat those 4 one more time.
I'll repeat the 4 one more time, then I'll ask the gentleman his question. If you want to know them. Okay, the names are in order: functional, synaptic, neuronal, systemic. One is minutes to hours, the other is days to weeks, the third one is months, and the fourth one is years. And if you reflect on yourself, you'll probably recognize the truth of this kind of dynamic. Right? The first guy in the West to describe this stuff was a Canadian, 1949. His last name was Hebb. I forget his first name, H-E-B-B. And at that time, everybody disagreed with him, which is typical of innovation, and it was called Hebbian learning. He called it, and everybody said, well, if Hebb says we learn like this, we'll call it Hebbian learning. And that was 1949, and it took a full 40 to 50 years before the rest of the neuroscience community actually started to believe him. And that's by early 90s, neuroplasticity was started. The consideration was that it was valid, but nobody knew very much about it. Yes, sir?
Do you happen to have a Neuralite on you?
Do I have a Neuralite on me? I have a Neuralite near me, and it's over there. It's
What
that.
it looks like?
It looks like that. You want to see it working?
Yeah.
Hard to say no.
What's your name?
Sigh.
Say?
Sigh.
Sai? Can't say no to Sai. Huh. Okay. I tell you what. It's 20 after 8. I've been talking for an hour. We said this was 7 till 9. This is what I think. I don't know who's coming to the training tomorrow. There are people that are coming to the 2-day training. You might be here or you might not be here. The address is on Tivoli. Do you know the address? Is there anybody that is coming?
4150.
Say again?
4150.
Okay, 4150 Tivoli. It's over in the marina. Larry Payne, who is another legendary founder in the community, like Ron Teagarden, in yoga is kindly letting us use his birthplace of Samatha Yoga. It's in a residential neighborhood. Be very mindful of where you park. When you come there, there's a side gate. You come in the side gate, it's at the back, and I'd like to start at 9 till 5. That's tomorrow and Sunday. You can come for all of it, you can come for part of it. It's up to you. Similar trainings I've done in Thailand, they've been audio recorded. They're on my website, theneuralite.com. There is a Facebook site if you want to do Facebook. It's called The Neuralite. And on the website, in the learning section, there's a 1-day, a 2-day, and a 3-day training like what I'm going to do tomorrow that was recorded that you can listen to as much as you want. It's there. There's a lot of slides. There are a lot of documents. There's a whole online training which is going to increase and increase. If this camera is working as well as we hope, the intention is to videotape the 2-day training starting tomorrow and then put it on the website. So if you can't make it all, you can watch it on the website soon enough, I hope. I'd like it if you're there. It's not that much fun when no one's there, but that's the idea. So it's not strict and mandatory. One thing does develop to another. The second day is different than the first day. And I mean, I don't care if they're only, do I care? Of course I care. But I'm very pleased to teach 3 people or 30 people. It's not going to be any different. So whoever comes, I'm there 100%. A few more, because my thought right now is we don't need to push this to 9 o'clock just to please the clock, but I want to, if there are a few more questions, then I want to go over there, fire it up, and let Sai, whatever you want to do, we can do it, okay? But questions first, yes?
2 things about the address. I have 4150 Tivoli. I thought I looked it up on the yoga studio website. And is it in Culver City or Marina Del Rey?
Marina Del Rey.
It's right on the
It's on the border.
90066.
it's by Costco.
90066?
90066 is the zip code.
And the address again is?
4150.
4150 Tivoli.
TIVOS.
It's residential. When you get there, there's a driveway. On the left side, you go back, there's a gate. Walk through the gate, it'll be open. And then there's the thing behind it.
And watch the parking sign.
Yeah, be cool. Larry doesn't do any trainings there anymore, nothing, because it's a residential neighborhood. Dragon Herbs is opening a new store in the Santa Monica Promenade. It has a big classroom. That's where I was going to do the training, but they're late on certificate of occupancy. So Larry, who's a buddy, offered us his yoga studio for the 2 days. So we've got to be nice people because he's got neighbors. It's a great spot. The vibe is just magnificent. It goes back, this is like, 30 years of deep history in that place. Syria, it's really, really a nice vibe. So, yes, sir.
Is there a response by the neuroscience community as to your neural life?